Good Thursday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for July the 6th. Today, we are reading together the first chapter of the Samson saga that wraps up our stories of the judges themselves within the book of the Judges, which might seem a little strange considering this is going to go for 4 chapters. So 13, 14, 15, and 16 contain the chapters about Samson, but there's still another few chapters after that. We've got 21 total chapters in Judges. So how can this be the last judge? Well, the epilogue of this text has quite a bit of action in it, a number of really sad situations that show up throughout the text. So we'll be examining those as we conclude our read through Judges here over the next few days. But for today, we're going to get into the Samson story. We're going to recognize how on the surface, it seems that the Samson story is going to take a turn for the better, that it's going to have a major uptick as far as the quality of the judge himself. And he is going to be a true deliverer, going to be someone that God is really going to use to do a lot of good. And yet, whenever we dig deeper, I think we're going to see that actually that's not going to be the case at all. So let's read together here in Judges chapter 13. Judges chapter 13, verse number 1. Judges 13, verse number 1, the Israelites again did what was evil in Yahweh's sight. So Yahweh handed them over to the Philistines 40 years. There was a certain man from Zorah, from the family of Dan, whose name was Manoah. His wife was unable to conceive and had no children. The angel of Yahweh appeared to the woman and said to her, although you are unable to conceive and have no children, you will conceive and give birth to a son. Now, please be careful not to drink wine or beer or to eat anything unclean, for indeed you will conceive and give birth to a son. You must never cut his hair, because the boy will be a Nazirite to God from birth, and he will begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines. Then the woman went and told her husband, a man of God came to me. He looked like the awe-inspiring angel of God. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. But he said to me, you will conceive and give birth to a son. Therefore, do not drink wine or beer, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazirite to God from birth until the day of his death. Manoah prayed to Yahweh and said, please, Lord, let the man of God you sent come again to us and teach us what we should do for the boy who will be born. God listened to Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman. She was sitting in the field, and her husband Manoah was not with her. The woman ran quickly to her husband and told him, the man who came to me the other day has just come back. So Manoah got up and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he asked, are you the man who spoke to my wife? I am, he said. Then Manoah asked, when your words come true, what will be the boy's responsibilities and work? The angel of Yahweh answered Manoah, your wife needs to do everything I told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine or drink wine or beer, and she must not eat anything unclean. Your wife must do everything I commanded her. Please stay here, Manoah told him, and we will prepare a young goat for you. The angel of Yahweh said to him, if I stay, I won't eat your food, but if you want to prepare a burnt offering, offer it to Yahweh. Parentheses, Manoah did not know he was the angel of Yahweh. Verse 17, the Manoah said to him, what is your name, so that we may honor you when your words come true? Why do you ask my name? The angel of Yahweh asked him, since it is beyond understanding. Manoah took the young goats and a grain offering and offered them on a rock to Yahweh, who did something miraculous while Manoah and his wife were watching. When the flame went up from the altar to the sky, the angel of Yahweh went up in its flame. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell face down on the ground. And the angel of Yahweh did not appear again to Manoah and his wife. Then Manoah realized it was the angel of Yahweh. We're certainly going to die, he said to his wife, because we have seen God. But his wife said to him, if Yahweh had intended to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted the burnt offering and the grain offering from us, and he would not have shown us all these things or spoken to us like this. So the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. The boy grew, and Yahweh blessed him. Then the spirit of Yahweh began to stir him in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. and that is Judges chapter 13. All right, so looking at this particular chapter here in Judges 13, I want to begin with basically a status report of the nation of Israel as a whole at this time, and it's not very good. In Judges 13 and verse number 1, we read that the Israelites again did what was evil in Yahweh's sight, so Yahweh handed them over to the Philistines 40 years. Considering the structure that we're looking at, the literary structure of the text here in this visual aid that we have, we're seeing that we're right down here at the bottom now. I mean, it's just about as bad as it can get. It's only going to become worse in chapters 17 through 21. And you can see that here in the text, and the fact that they are under oppression for 40 years, which is the longest time that Israel is said to be under oppression within the book of the Judges. And as we see the parallel account here with Othniel, it's interesting that in Othniel, we see that there was peace for 40 years. So where we began at the beginning of the book with peace for 40 years, we now have at the end of the book oppression for 40 years. Those who are oppressing are the Philistines, and they are a group that was introduced just a couple of chapters ago, back in chapter 10, where they were one of the nations that Yahweh allowed to again oppress the people who were rebelling against him. So at this point, status not good at all. It is just you could not ask for a worse condition within Israel at this time. We are introduced to Samson's father. His name is Manoah. I'll just refer to his mom as Mrs. Manoah. We're introduced first to his father Manoah, but we are then told about his wife, Mrs. Manoah, that she is unable to bear a child. And basically, anytime we see that someone is unable to bear a child, soon after that, they're going to be able to bear a child. So there are a number of striking similarities between this story and the story of Abraham and Sarah, but there are also a number of reversals, which I think will really help us understand what we should be preparing ourselves for. But as of right now, we're reading what we're reading here in Judges 13 to think, oh man, here's a child of promise that's about to come. This is going to be something good. Just as Isaac was going to bring about good things, so good things should be brought about by this child as well. Mrs. Manoah is told that she's going to bear a son by the angel of Yahweh appearing to her. And again, I believe this is to be a manifestation of Jesus himself in a pre-incarnate form. The only other time we see this type of thing happening is with Isaac, I believe it's the angel of Yahweh in that instance as well, appearing and letting Abraham and Sarah know that again, or actually, I guess it's God himself is appearing to Abraham and Sarah back in Genesis 18, I think it is, letting them know that a son's going to be born. So if you have not just an angel you think about with Mary, it's in that instance, it seems to be an angel alone. Here it's God, and then also another manifestation of deity in the form of the pre-incarnate Jesus. If they're appearing to you, then that's very significant. And we begin to see that's the case here. He appears and he just recognizes, yeah, you're unable to conceive. Maybe her inability to conceive is tied in with the rebellion of Israel. In certain texts previously that we've read, we were told that part of the punishment for rebellion would be the inability to conceive and to bear children and to be blessed by that. So he says, I know you're unable to conceive and you have no children, but you are going to have a son. But there are some instructions for you as well. Don't drink wine or beer. So don't drink the normal drinking stuff, and definitely don't drink the strong stuff. Do not eat anything that is unclean. And then whenever he is born, you are to enter him into a Nazirite vow where his hair is not to be cut. And he will take on these responsibilities of a Nazirite that can be found in Numbers chapter 6. He's going to be a Nazirite to God from birth. And here's the promise. He will begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines. He will begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines. So here is the deliverer. Here's the one who's going to bring restoration and relief to Israel. The woman goes and tells her husband about what has taken place, but he doesn't he seems unsure about it. He doesn't seem convinced necessarily. Or you could read it that way, or you could just read that he is wanting to gain more assurance in what is about to take place, because he prays to Yahweh. He says, please let this man come back. And he adds on, let him teach us what we are to do for this boy who will be born. That seems to be a good parently response. We want to know how to do right by this child that you're blessing us with. God listens to him. The angel comes back once again. But again, Manoah's not with Mrs. Manoah. She runs, tells him. They all come back together. They both come back together. And he asks them, are you the man who spoke to my wife? I am. When your words come true, what's up with this boy? What will be his responsibilities? What will be his work? And he says, well, everything I told your wife is what you need to do. Just that's what you need to be concerned with. Make sure she is doing what she needs to do at this point. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, drink wine, beer, nothing unclean. She must do everything I've commanded you. Okay, Manoah's got that. Well, please stay here, and I'm going to prepare a goat for you. It still doesn't seem to register with Manoah that this is an angel or the angel of Yahweh. The angel responds to him, well, if I stay, I'm not going to eat your food, which is strange because that's different from what we see with God and the two angels that are with him in Genesis chapter 18. But if you want to do something, just offer an offering to Yahweh. Again, the author narrates a little bit here at the end of verse 16. Manoah still does not know that this is the angel of Yahweh. Well, then Manoah asks him a question, and you can interpret this as being a power play on his part, and having the name of somebody was a big deal back then, or you can see this as him being obtuse. Might seem to take this as this being him being obtuse, since the narrator tells us he still does not see, still does not understand this is the angel of Yahweh. He's not recognizing this person in front of him as somebody very special. So maybe it is him being a bit dense, not recognizing what he should recognize, which, I mean, probably shouldn't surprise us, seeing as how that Israel themselves is very wayward at this time. But the angel doesn't give him that. Instead, he kind of rebukes him. Why do you ask me my name? It's beyond your understanding. Don't worry about it. So Manoah's like, okay, fine. So he goes, he gets a young goat, he gets a grain offering, he puts them on the rock. Yahweh does something miraculous here in this moment. Flames go up from the altar to the sky, and the angel goes up with the flame as well. And at that point, Manoah and Mrs. Manoah, they both fall face down, and the angel does not come back once again. It's at this moment that Manoah realizes this is the angel of Yahweh, and he freaks out. He has a Gideon moment from chapter 6 verse 22. We're gonna die. We've seen Yahweh. We're done for. But here is Mrs. Manoah showing some sense. She's saying, snap out of it. If Yahweh had intended to kill us, he would not have accepted the offering. He wouldn't have shown us all these things. He wouldn't have spoken to us like this. We're fine. This was a blessing that we received. So the woman, verse 24, gave birth to a son, and she named him Samson. The boy grew, and Yahweh blessed him. And then the spirit of Yahweh began to stir him in the camp of Dan. All right. So there's a number of Jesus echoes there, kind of what we read in Jesus in the gospel, that he grew in stature and knowledge of Yahweh. Seems to be a bit of the same thing here. The fact that the spirit of Yahweh began to stir him, I mean, that's a good sign. So maybe with all these things on the surface, again, we're thinking, this is good. There's a lot of Abraham and Sarah things going on here, except there are a number of reversals as well. One of those being the fact that, in this instance, Yahweh appears to the woman instead of the man. So in the first case with Isaac and Abraham and Sarah and God appeared to Abraham, made the promises. And then later on, it's Sarah who doubts. Here it's reversed. He appears to the woman, he appears to Mrs. Manoah, and it is her husband who doubts. It is Mrs. Manoah who shows sense and seems to show faith. She's the one that seems to be the one who has a stronger spiritual fortitude at this point. And she really has great influence all throughout the story. And in fact, one of the things that sets up for the story of Samson is the fact that women are a very important part of this story. They play a major influential role in Samson's life, both positively here, and unfortunately negatively as well. Samson, the name itself means something like sunny or sun man or sun boy, and that certainly comes into play once we run into Delilah, whose name finds roots in something like the word for night. So again, that female tie in there, and of course that's not going to be a very positive one. So on the surface, we're thinking, oh, this is really good. This is going to be the guy. But again, we see the reversals from Abraham's story concerning him and Sarah and Isaac and Yahweh. We're thinking, well, maybe not so much then. Maybe so, maybe not. At this point, if you stop reading here in the scroll for the Israelite who's reading this for the first time, or might be hearing it for the first time, you might be thinking, well, this is Isaac 2.0. This is the son of promise. Surely lots of good is going to come from this son who's going to be born. Maybe not. We know certainly Israel is not in a good place, having been oppressed for 40 years by the Philistines, having acted evil in Yahweh's sight, and seemingly being okay with it, seeing as how we don't see throughout chapter 13. What we've seen previously is there's oppression, they cry out to Yahweh, and then he gives them a deliverer. Here we see oppression, but we don't see them crying out to Yahweh. Seems as if they're pretty comfortable with the Philistines, in fact. Seems as if they're okay with that. But what is God sending Samson to do? Well, he's sending Samson to not only deliver, but to really shake things up and to show his people that, being under the thumb and rule of the Philistines, that's not God's will for you. Now, how is he going to go about this? Well, if you know the Samson story, not exactly very well at times. But for those who might not be familiar with the story, might be thinking, oh, things are looking up. Things are going better than expected, considering where we are. But I'll just remind you one more time, show the graphic again. Look at where we are in the fatal funnel. We're right here towards the bottom, where things begin to get really, really dark in the story. So just keep that in mind as we continue to work through the text here of the Daniel saga. Tomorrow we'll read chapters 14 and 15 together. And then on Saturday, we will look at chapter 16. So if you have any questions or comments about the text, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. I'll be happy to try to answer those questions for you, or to have a conversation about what you're interested in. I appreciate so much you reading along with me today in this text of Judges chapter 13. Again, we will look tomorrow in chapters 14 and 15, where we're going to read a number of scenes from Samson's life that really begin to develop for us and show us the type of character that he has. And then chapter 16 on Saturday is going to be the final scene concerning Samson and Delilah, and just the real issues that Samson, again, seemed to have with the women folk, how that just normally did not go well for him at all. So we will look at that. I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything else for today. Let me double check our calendar here. Nope, nothing else for today. So we will be back at it again tomorrow, everyone. Hope to see you then. Take care. God bless.